Welcome to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Today I have with me Chef Samuel Burke, corporate chef at Meat and Livestock Australia. Today's guest started out as an apprentice chef and went on to become one of the most respected voices in Australia's red meat industry. With over 30 years of experience across beef, lamb, veal and goat, Sam has done it all. From butchery and large-scale catering to leading international campaigns that put Australian meat on the global stage, including judging the World Steak Championships in the UK. He's worked everywhere from cruise ships and airlines to pubs, hotels, fine dining, and quick service chains. And what makes Sam stand out is his mission: championing sustainability, reducing food waste, and showing the world the beauty of secondary cuts like chuck, brisket, blade, and shin. He's represented Australia in markets across Europe, Asia, and North America. And he brings a hands-on paddock to plate approach that connects producers with chefs and consumers alike. Sam joins us to share his journey, the lessons he's learned along the way, and of course, what he wishes he knew at 30. Sam, have I missed anything out of your introduction?
Well, Fran, that was a fantastic introduction. I actually feel quite embarrassed, humbled, you know what I mean? Like it's been a journey, that's for sure. And, a lot of hard work, but a lot of rewards as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love what I do. I love who I work for, and I love the industry. So, both agriculture and food service. So it's kind of like the dream job, but it does have its challenges, just like everything.
It does. And we were talking before we pressed the button and came on air, we were talking about the challenges of traveling and the amount of travel that we do and, and being able to look after ourselves in that space.
Very important, Fran. I guess for me, it's about making sure that you rest when you can. I exercise every day, probably for not long periods, and then I try to watch what I eat. But I guess I'm a stress eater. When I'm stressed, I go down and I open up a packet of Tim Tams or make myself a cappuccino, So it's you learn as you go along. But yeah, food is my passion, my goal, and my love. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So you've
Everything
got to
from
taste it.
a nice bit of fruit to a beautiful main course in a restaurant.
Absolutely. And of course the meat and steaks and yeah, amazing. Love it. Sam, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to be my guest today. So we're going to start and just imagine that you're jumping in a time machine right now. You're 30 years old again. Where are you? What are you doing? And what's going through your mind at that stage of life?
Well, I was 30 years old, believe it or not. It was when I first branched out of the kitchen to an operations role with Australia's biggest catering company at the time, Spotless. I had a young daughter, our first daughter. I was going off to work with a brand new company car, a briefcase and nothing in it, and then fresh out of my whites, trying to learn the operational side of food service, managing a portfolio of catering contracts all across New South Wales. So it was an exciting, nervous time out of the kitchen, but it kind of was my real growth pivot to life beyond the whites, if you like,
Yeah.
on the other side of the business operationally. So managing staff, cost of goods, tendering for businesses, all that kind of business orientated stuff out of the kitchen, so to speak.
It's a big step, isn't it? It's a big step for a lot of chefs to come out of, sort of being on your feet all day to going into the different roles of actually being able to, as you say, it's a different business. You're then managing staff. It's not just you.
Yeah. So it was like the role was like I worked for the Spotless Group, and we had, just in the division I worked in, we had 185 sites around Australia. And my first role was an operations manager, and I had a portfolio of, I'd say, 15 sites. So they were all different cafes and retail establishments. And there was one training center at the Commonwealth Bank, and I also ran the cafe that was in our head office. So it was like you said, you had that diversity of young people,
Mm,
older people, people your age, and you just had to manage all those different personalities.
mm.
And there's a lot of personalities in hospitality,
Isn't
and
there just?
all different types of, if you like, financial environments. Like there was
Mm,
management fee contracts where the client takes all the onus, and we got a fee to run that establishment per month. And then there was subsidy catering establishments which were subsidized, but we took some of the risk as well. And then there was
mm,
zero subsidy where we took all the risk and looked after those catering established businesses. So each one of them had their tailored approach, and working for a big organization, there was then rebates as well.
huh,
And then you're managing cost of goods, you're managing safety, you're managing staff, you've got to turn a profit. You're working
mm,
for an ASX listed company. So real business challenges that you're accountable for. You know what I mean? That kind of grew me on the operational perspective of being a, a chef, or coming out of the whites. And I always thought that at that time, I'd made it. I'd had the company car. I had my Nokia 3310 phone with the hands-free kit in, and a young wife and a young baby. And, but
yeah.
I did miss the kitchen, and that's why I'm back in it today, So, yeah.
I was just gonna say, so going back to, sort of when you were 30 and that time when you came out of the whites, I mean, did you feel that you had life figured out at 30, or were you just winging it at that point?
Of course, I guess when you started a new job, you're nervous, you're unsure, you wing it a bit, you fake it till you make it, when you start something new. But I believed in myself too. I had a lot of experience in the kitchen, and I did run some big events, and you just got to trust yourself and then learn off others and immerse yourself with good people,
Yeah.
and then watch what they do, and then put your own twinge on it, spin on it, if you like. So yeah, look, it was a difficult time, but I'm so glad I did that in my career,
Mm,
because it opened me up beyond the whites. It's a hard gig being in a kitchen 12,
yeah,
14, 16 hours, and it's
yeah,
a young person's job when you're in your 20s and mid 20s. But when you start to get a bit older, like I am now, or mature, it's hard slog being in a kitchen 12 hours a day. So try to transition out of that, whether it be into
yeah.
sales, for a food service company, or running businesses from front of house, or
Mm,
operations. And I guess for me, as a young person, I wanted that family life balance at 30 back, because I was starting to have children. I had a young wife. I wanted to be at home on the weekend with my daughter at the time, and enjoy being a parent, not just grinding it out in a kitchen, which I did most of my life up until that time.
yeah, it's a big commitment, isn't it? And as I say, I mean, from a chef's perspective, when you are in the kitchen and you've got that responsibility, life balance is a really difficult. I mean, as you do, I know a lot of chefs around the world, and it's quite often the topic of conversation. The fact that it's a really difficult thing to manage, and I hope actually that that's something that is going to be addressed in, as we evolve.
Yeah, look, I think the industry, look, I think there's a lot more respect for the employee in terms of balance now. I see a lot of the top restaurants rostering their teams on, to give them a bit of balance in life, have the weekend off
Mm,
occasionally, rather than having split shifts all the time. There
yeah,
is that adrenaline of working in busy atmospheres, and excitement working in a back of house environment on a busy kitchen on the weekend. At the end of the day, sometimes it's nice to be on the other side as well, eating in those establishments or socializing, because you've only got one life, and you want to make sure that you have that balance. It's so important, right? And up until, I don't know, just 10 years ago, I worked every weekend as well, right? Whether I was in an operational job, I had my side hustles going in, and that's what I just did as a young father, to have a mortgage and bring kids up and sending to Catholic schools and all that jazz. So I guess my life's always been about, I probably haven't been the smartest person tool in the shed. I wasn't the best at school, but I always put my head down and worked hard
Yeah.
and focused on the task at hand, networked well, and did what I said I was going to do, and that's how I've kind of lived life, if you like.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a fairly sound vision and a fairly sound way to do things. Looking back at sort of when you were 30, what was your biggest dream at that time?
Yeah, my biggest dream was to pay my mortgage off, which I did kind of 5 years after,
Mhm.
as you do. I lived in a little fibro house, and then I knocked it down and built another house, and I'm back in a mortgage again. But I wanted to make sure that I was a good father. I was bringing home good support, like a good income to go on those holidays and do those things, and I just wanted to provide the best life for my family, and enjoy myself as well, right? I love my tech, I love my hobbies, I love rugby league, and at the time it was just like living the best life I can and being successful in whatever I'd want to do.
I love that. And did life take you where you expected?
Yeah, well, look, it's a good question. Yeah, yeah, it did in a way, but I worked hard for it, right? So when I got into those operational roles, I never forget. I had this young lady said to me, "Sam, well, if you want to come out of the whites and into operations," she was a manager of mine, right?
Mm,
You need to have some tertiary education behind you, you know, and in terms of business sense.
mm,
I threw it right back at work in HR at the time, and I was a loyal employee. At 30 years old, I was there for 12 years, 12 years.
oh, wow.
At the time, I ended up working that company for 20 in
Yeah,
total. And I said, well, put me in uni. Let's do it. I'm ready. I've got my chef's trade behind me. So
yeah.
at age 36, 6 years later, right, when I was in that operations role, I actually went back to uni and did a degree in business at UTS.
Oh,
So
wow,
as
well
a
done.
mature age student, so
Yeah,
my TER was probably to be laughed at, or they what do they call it now? ATAR in the
yeah,
HSC. It was
yeah,
like I got 32 or something out of 100, right? But at age 36, I did a degree at business. So it wasn't my time.
yeah,
But, as a young kid, I've been working since 12 years old on a milk run, right? So
yeah.
that went into McDonald's, then it went to retail, then it went into kitchens, and here we are today. Yeah, I've always seen if you put down and you put your mind to it and you work hard, there is gold at the end of the rainbow,
Yeah,
right? There is, but it's how much do you want it? How relentless are you?
yeah,
So in my 30s, I was quite happy to achieve a degree at that age, and then I went on and said, well, there was another, I want to be trained to be a TAFE teacher if I have to. So I did my cert for TAE as a TAFE teacher, right? To be able to teach younger students commercial cookery, which, funnily enough, in 2024, I updated that qual again, right? Because I didn't want it to go stale, right?
yeah.
So, I updated it to the new qualification, if you like, right? So learning has been a big journey for me that I continue to do every day, and that's carried on from a lot in my 30s because 30s were probably the most pivotal time of my life. I had a young family. I came out of the kitchen and I started to evolve out of the whites, if you like. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think, it's one of the things, kids today, and same when we were younger, have to make decisions. And if you're not that way inclined to follow the curriculum and do what you need to do and get the results, as you said, a 32 ATAR. I went to university, but only because I was literally told I had to. I wanted to go and do art.
Mm,
I wanted to go and do an art degree, and my dad said, "No, you go and do a proper degree." So, those things, I didn't enjoy it. I got a third class honours degree, which,
amazing.
okay, I got through, but I mean, it was really I look back on that, it was really a waste of 4 years, apart from the connections that I made and I suppose the growing that you do during that time. But going back later to, when you don't choose your subjects at 15 or 16, which I certainly didn't. And it sounds as though, although you went into the chef world, that, from a business perspective, that was something that came later on in life. And that's so important because learning is it's a constant thing now and it's so accessible to everybody. And I think that's the beauty now of our online world, isn't it? That we can do whatever we want. And it's about being passionate about it and also being able to go, well, actually, I need that. So where can I get it from? How can I do it? And the best way is to get a corporation to pay you to take you through it. I
Yeah,
think that's great
100%,
start.
because then you're committed, you don't wanna let your employer down. That's
Yeah,
exactly right. So, it was a bit like that, so I pushed really hard because my employer was paying for me to do that,
yeah,
degree at the time, so I pushed real hard to get through it, and lifelong my current employer sponsored me to renew my TAE, cert, which I'm looking at to my left here, my Cert 4 in Training Assessment. So,
awesome.
I guess, yeah, like, for me, Fran, pivotal time, right? I had a young
Yeah,
family. I had, I completed my mortgage in my 30s, and I did some tertiary education, so it was a real pivotal time, probably the most important time of my life when I look back on it, right?
mm,
It was a time where I achieved a lot, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting because sort of when I first started this podcast, I've had a lot of people from chefs, but also from the sporting world. And a lot of people actually haven't really reflected on how important their 30s were. And
yeah.
it's been really interesting to just listen to, when obviously being confronted with the questions to actually look at just how pivotal the 30s were.
If you think about it, for me, looking back on it, I had 3 daughters in that time.
Wow.
My career took a big change,
Yeah.
and, it was and it was kinda like the time in my life that established me to get to where I am today, So,
Yeah.
look, you can always do things better. What I wish I knew in my 30s, I wish I was just saying this joking to someone, a good mate of mine, Glenn Flood, and I go, "When I was 30, I wish I would have bought a couple of old Australian cars, that in the 70s they'd be worth a fortune today, like the old Kingswoods and that, when they were $5,000.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you always look back in hindsight, but yeah,
Well,
terrific
I
time,
think hindsight might be my next business, bottling hindsight, because I think we could
100%,
sell it on Amazon.
100%.
Looking back now, what's something that you were completely wrong about at 30?
Yeah, so look, I guess in terms of being wrong is that I probably thought I knew more about things that I did. You become a
Mm,
little bit cocky when you get into a senior role. You know what I mean? So you look back at that time and said, "Oh, I should have thought, I should have spent more time doing this way or another way, right? You know what I mean? Rather than being bullish and taking it front on, right? Because when I was 30, I was indestructible. This is the way we're going to do it. Let's go headstrong,
yeah,
where sometimes it would have been better to listen, think about the outcomes, and then realize, is it really the way to go? And another thing I used to I was wrong about listening to other people and getting upset by what people say. As you get older, you learn how to let things go, right? You learn how to not let things upset you as much. You know what I mean? And that's very difficult to do when you're young.
yeah,
You probably take the words on and you misconstrue them in your mind. You know what I mean? It's sometimes it's just let it go. Why you're getting yourself upset, what it's going to achieve. Simple, right? My daughter last week, she had an accident in her car, right? 19 years old, smashed the car. She was okay.
'cause
The
yeah, I
club
was
pays
gonna
the
ask.
premiums, and
Yeah.
I'm supporting these cars, paying the
Yeah,
insurance
it's
every
not her
month and
premium,
that.
it's yours.
Like
Yes,
like
I
in
know
in my
that.
30s, I probably would have got a bit angry, but, I was at a function when I found that this happened. First thing, is she all right?
Yeah,
And then what can I do about it? It's past, it's done.
yeah,
Just relax. She's upset, whatever. It is what it is,
yeah,
Take the hits and forward and move on. Whereas
yeah,
when I was younger, I'd probably get upset and angry. Well, why weren't you concentrating, and et cetera, right? But when you get to when you get older and you look back, you think, well, why didn't I think like that when I was younger? Why would I put myself for all that stress and angst, you know? So I guess as you get older, you learn how to deal with situations better
Yeah,
when they
you do.
yeah.
Yeah.
You become more resilient, right? And then
Yeah.
you learn just to let it go, yeah, yeah, like and I've I lost my and it happens to everyone. I lost my father 5 years ago, right?
Mm,
I dealt for a lot longer I dealt for a lot better being older than what I probably would have been younger, because I was
yeah.
a lot more emotional when I was younger, I reckon. So, a lot stronger, I looked at it like, yes, I was upset, but I needed
Mm,
to be the man of the house because 'cause I've got 2 sisters, I've got 3 daughters, I've got my wife and my mum. I'm the
my
single guy here, right? I need to take that responsibility from the front and grieve
mm,
in my own time and be the strong person for them at this time, and then worry about myself later. Whereas in my 30s, I probably would have been a bit more self-centered and thought about myself. Does that make sense?
yeah,
So
it does, it
yeah,
does. And I think, when you have children and, all of those things, I think it's one of those things where self becomes I think there's a couple of things in there. One, you really don't care quite as much what other people think, so it's actually easier to be really clear and stay with your own values. And I think and I think you do give more of yourself once children arrive.
yep,
It's
100% you do, and it never ends, right?
apparently
And one thing's being a parent in the in 2025. I believe it is harder for the young generation today. Like I was
yeah,
speaking to someone the other day, when you finished, I don't know, school or tertiary education and you got your first real job, you could save for a deposit for a house in 5 years,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And, you got your 20%, you went into the bank, and then away you went.
yeah.
These days, how does that happen, So,
Well, when you
you
look
wanna
at
know
the
what
cost of
keeps me
everything.
awake? It's not necessarily about myself, it's about how am I gonna look after those young people who are my kids that are now
Yeah,
in their late teens and adults, one of them an adult, have a roof over their head and not have to
yeah,
worry about anything. So
yeah.
hence
No,
why I
I
built
agree.
the big house. I don't expect them to be
You
leaving
got more to
anytime soon,
say.
right? Yeah, yeah. So
No, I
different
agree with
struggles,
you.
right? Different times. Yeah,
No, it's very, very different times, and I think, whereas before, so you'd go and do a degree and pretty much had a pathway mapped out as to where you were going. I think there's a lot more opportunities now, and I think one of the from an online space and things, but I'm not sure that our education system is keeping up with the rate of change and the rate of innovation, and I think,
especially
that
with AI and all that.
yeah, I mean, and that's only the last 2 years, isn't it? I mean, the technological advances in artificial intelligence, and I think there's new things now that have moved on from that, it is just phenomenal.
I
But,
agree.
keeping up with it, I mean, I love it. I find it incredibly useful,
Amazing.
but I'm not sure that the jobs that were open to us when we were kids are now open to, the next generation coming through, and
100%.
certainly not in the volume.
100.
So I think that that's one of the things. They say that life is the best teacher. The things that happen, the lessons that come wrapped in disaster. So let's talk about the biggest curveball that life's thrown at you, whether it was in business, relationships, or personal growth. What's the one thing that you felt at the time was the absolute worst thing that ever happened, but it probably actually ended up shaping you?
Well, the employer I worked for 20 years, spotless. So I left school and I got my apprenticeship with them. And I did other jobs while I was working for that organization, but we got bought out by private equity and they started to diverse out of food and into, private equity likes to streamline a lot of things and turn things around and make a profit. And I ended up looking after cleaning sites as well as catering, right? So that's what really upset me. This wasn't my you'd work in the food service capacity, and then at night you'd be out at Westfield Chatswood looking at, how toilets were cleaned and floors and ballards and all that kind of stuff, balustrades, whatever they're called, right? And at the time, that's what drove me away from that organisation. I remember one day driving up from a new site mobilisation, and another issue was happening, and I got busted speeding because I was having a debate with a
Wow.
client on the phone while I was driving, and then I applied for the job for MLA out of anger because I was so loyal to Spotless for 20 years that I thought I'd never leave them. My previous employer, right? But when the job came from MLA, a good man, Lachlan Botel, convinced me. He was the gentleman that recruited me. That you know what you're doing. It's time to give something else a go. And I was scared of leaving, really scared of leaving the employer that I've been with since I was
Mm,
18, and I
yeah.
was 39 then.
Wow.
And he convinced me to take the plunge, and here I am 12 years later, having probably the best job I've had in my life, right? Honestly,
That's
so
fantastic.
what scared me is when I joined that organization, going from Spotless, where I had my own office, I was well respected, I had a company car, I had people that reported through to me, I built the stature, I built the foundations, having to prove myself all over again at a new employer after I'd been with one for so long, actually so long since I left school, right? So you start a new employer, you gotta prove yourself again. And then don't forget, I came out of a suit job back into the whites.
Yeah.
I had to really get up to skill with my culinary application too, right? So it was like 9 years properly out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I had to learn how to be a damn good chef again really fast. So what did I do? I read books, I cooked on the weekend, just like I've done all my life. I put my whole 100% effort into it. And then, when I was a young kid, I should say, I worked in a butcher's shop as a retail assistant. So that strength there, married with my culinary and operation strengths, gave me the ability to take on this role
Yeah.
now. And the way I so when I took on the role, there was a bit of technical support, if you like,
Mhm.
but I kind of morphed the role into a business development manager role. So what I did is I went to all these executive chefs who I met over the years in my senior role at Spotless.
Mm.
Knew the head chef at the time of Coles Hotels, Spirit Hotels at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Knew the head chef of another commercial catering company. I knew chefs at airlines, etc. And I said, what if us at MLA, the red meat industry experts, came in, analysed our business with you, looked at your challenges, and then collaborated with you and engineered solutions to make red meat shine on menu. And that could be collaborating with our marketing campaigns. That could be culinary confidence to teach your chefs to be better with red meat on menu. That could be looking at opportunities to pivot your menus to something different where red meat could
Mm.
shine. And then at the end of that, you could give me some sort of a case study on how it's helped your business or how it hasn't helped your business. Then take those case studies back to MLA and use them as activations on how we promote red meat with frontline food service. And that's how it began, friend.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did it with one customer, and then another chef came on, and another chef came on, another chef came on. Now we've got up to 20 to 30 businesses that we've worked over in the 12 years, everywhere from Carnival Cruise Lines to
Yeah.
Donata Air with Emirates to quick service restaurants like Subway and Domino's to aged care establishments to big commercial caterers like Compass,
Brilliant.
working hand in hand,
Yeah.
showcase Australian red meat on menu, right? And that's how
Brilliant. Yeah,
it's
that's how it's
how
done.
it's
It's the
fucking
power of
grown.
connection, isn't it?
And it's something that I'm very proud of, because we built it ourselves as a team, you know? And brought on another lovely lady who works for me, Julie. 4 years after I started, winning this business, the business kind of believed in us. And then I was allowed to bring on somebody else to give me a hand.
Mhm.
And then just last year, we've just built a state of the art culinary center. And I mean state of the art, where we can have functions and bring people in to grow the man of Australian red meat on menu. And the business
Fantastic.
has given us that establishment. they've believed in what we've done. When I started, I had a Millet stovetop oven, electric, and a 60 centimeter wall oven. And now we've got I'd love to bring you in, Fran, when you're next in town.
Love to.
A wonderful commercial facility that is probably the best R&D kitchen in Australia, I'd say, one of the top, you know. So all that's come from hard work, grit, and
Yeah.
determination to, I don't know, arrest the challenges of red meat on menu, if you like, for both consumer and food service. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it really points to the power of positive relationships. And you look at the chef brotherhood. And I don't mean to insult any females of it because I think everyone is included in, I don't know whether you call brotherhood sisterhood, but
No,
I mean
100%.
we have a beautiful positive connection in the chef world here in Australia. And the way that you look after your young folk, the youngsters coming through that see and aspire to, all of the innovations that come through from, you know, the slightly older generation. I think it's lovely. I think it's heartwarming, and I think it's successful.
Well, Fran, I agree with you. You know, I looked after apprentices at Spotless. I was the apprentice manager in New South Wales
Mm,
ACT. And then now here at MLA, I have a mature person that works with me as my sous chef who does a fantastic job.
yeah.
I'm a big believer of appointing the right person
Mm,
for the right job, no matter what sex, no matter what age, the right person, you know, and that pays dividends, right?
yeah.
Because if you look after your people and you lead from the front,
Yeah.
they will be there every day for you. It's simple, right? If you provide a good working and you work along each other and you work as a team, you'll succeed, you know?
Yeah, you will, and you support each other, and that's no,
100%.
those are the lessons from the kitchen into business, into corporate life, and as you now have come back into the kitchen, it's, those things. So when you go back to when you were 30, you were making those decisions, you were going from your whites into the corporate roles, things. If you could go back and whisper advice to yourself in that time, what would you say to yourself now?
What would I say to myself now? I guess in that time it'd probably be, I don't know, take the foot off the accelerator a bit. I worked extremely hard in my 30s,
Yeah.
extremely hard, because I had the agility and the health more than what I've got now to be able to do that. You know, I worked 3 jobs, right? I was a DJ, I was a chef at 2 jobs,
Of course
and
you
I
are.
was a cleaner at night at Barker's College with a vacuum cleaner, cleaning, right? So before I went into that kind of like senior role with the company car and that, towards the very early 30s, I was hustling 3 or 4 jobs at the
Yeah,
same time, and why? Because I had the energy to do it and I had a responsibility. So I guess in hindsight, I would have, I don't know, probably enjoyed life a bit more and gone and played golf with my dad. I would have loved that. Dad was a top golfer, right?
okay.
And my sister spent a lot of time doing sport on the week with him, playing golf with my dad and my mother, on the Saturday. But I was always
Mm,
working every
that's
weekend,
sparkling.
right?
Mm,
So, it would have been nice to have some of those weekends back when I was younger to be able to do more with my father, you know what I mean? And enjoy some more time with him. That's a kind of a regret for me too, but I don't have a lot of regrets.
yeah,
You're asking me to think of something. I
yeah,
still, when I was a young dad with young children, I made sure I got in the car for my wife every Sunday and went to both of our parents' house and I said to Jamela, we do it now. That's my wife, Jamela, because
yeah,
these people aren't going to be with us forever. So you make
no,
the memories now because all you have is memories, right? You
yeah,
can have all this physical stuff around you, the latest TV, the latest sports car downstairs. I've been successful. I've got the toys, right?
yeah,
But can you take that away from you? No, you can't
no,
take any of that away with you. What
mm,
you have is memories. So that is the most important thing to me as Sam Burke, the memories, and I make no regret too, right? you ask me what I wish I knew at 30, what I did correct at 30 is that every year since my kids have been born, every year I've taken the family on a holiday. It might
Nice.
not be overseas or anything. It's just up to the Gold Coast or Sussex Inlet on the South Coast. But every year since those kids have been born, we have had a beach holiday at the end of the year. And guess what? At age 21, 19, my kids still want to come on
They're
family
still
holiday
coming with you.
because they love it. They love it,
That's
right?
lovely. Well, you've
That's
done
it,
something right as a parent. They still
and
wanna hang out with you.
so, we can always look back at our 30s and say, oh, we could have done this better. But for me, I believe I did a lot of right in my 30s too.
I
It was,
love
it was
that.
an
And
important
I
time that
and
I
I think
established myself and looked after my family.
absolutely, and those are, those are top qualities, aren't they? They're the most important things in life. And, obviously, um, what we're talking about here, what I wish I knew at 30 isn't necessarily for us to regret or it's
Mm,
actually to share those wisdoms with the next generation coming through, because the world is a different place now. The world is changing at such a fast rate. And I think the things that we look back on and think, geez, I wish I'd done that, or I wish I'd done that. If we can share just some of that wisdom with the next generation coming through so that they can, as you said earlier, sort of, you maybe didn't think about things or the consequences of things. You're a lot more bull in a china shop in actually making decisions and things. And I think sometimes those advice or that advice is really important to the younger generation. If you had to give 3 pieces of advice to your 30-year-old self, what would they be?
so the three pieces of advice to my 30-year-old self would be slow down, things will come. You know what I mean? Don't be so anxious all the time. Probably have a bit more balance in life rather than working all the time. Spend more time at the beach. And also, spend some more time with my dad, my parents.
Yeah,
When I was younger and he was younger, because at that time, Dad, towards my dad's later years, I think he had a bit of dementia. He didn't talk a lot, he didn't interact a lot. But when I was 30 and he was 50 or 55, he was a a very funny man and a
yeah,
very great character, right? So I miss that. I miss
yeah,
that as I reflect. What I mean. That's for me. I don't have a lot of regrets in my working career.
yeah,
Have no regrets in the beautiful lady that I married and my kids. I have regrets that I could have spent a bit more time with my family, my parents.
yeah,
As I got older, because it was all about me bringing my young family up, where I probably could have spent some more time, with the old man. Even though, you know what, I hate golf. I'll do 9 holes and I want to get off the course, right? But just doing the things that he likes and having that time, you know what I mean?
yeah,
That's the Sam Burke speaking from the heart, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think, and that's important. It's an im and it's a really important lesson to share with our listeners, because you don't get,
And probably travel a bit more too. There's another thing, right? I didn't leave the country. I had one trip in 2011 for work to Vietnam when I was at Spotless, but I saw most of the world in the last 12 years with my employer. So I kind
wow,
of probably as a young fella, but I chose a different avenue. I got married young and I bought a house, so I couldn't afford to travel, right? It was just locked into that mortgage and working hard to set my career up. But, young again, I probably would have liked to travel and work overseas when I was young. There's another thing that I thought of that, bring up in the discussion point today.
yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, tremendous opportunities open to chefs, throughout the world. I
Thank
mean,
you.
I've got an incredible network of chefs throughout. I do a lot of business in the Dubai and the Middle East and across Southeast Asia. And, gosh, the opportunities that are available to young chefs that are wanting to go and make
Truly.
chefing their profession is incredible. But I think also sound advice from you, it's about also making sure that you keep some form of life balance, if that's possible with a
if
professional
that's
chefing
possible. Like
career.
in the last 14 years, I've seen the world with MLA. I've worked in the US, Japan, China, like you said at the introduction,
Yeah.
East Asia, through Europe. We've done some big functions, European Parliament, and Austrade over in Belgium, 600
Wow.
cocktail party. We've done functions in Hyde Park in the UK. We did functions for the Queen's Young Achievers Leaders in Holborn at Australia House there. We've done functions in Dubai, in the last 14 years, what's really helped me out in my commercial cookery is a bit of modern French, that you
Okay.
learn because you can
Mhm.
communicate in any kitchen around the
Yeah,
world. Those
absolutely. Yep.
fundamental
Yep.
basics, right? So, I haven't missed out, and that's largely because of the choice I've taken, and my current employer has looked after me and given me invigorating opportunities to spread my passion and knowledge for red meat and help others out, celebrate our wonderful produce around the world.
Yeah,
That
amazing.
it's I pinch myself every day. I
Yeah,
don't
it's a
expect
pretty
it. I
perfect
don't take
life.
it for granted, and I take it really seriously. When I hop on that plane and I'm going to that destination, I've got 100% focus to give it the full Sam Burke attention to deliver the best possible outcome for our producers. So
Fantastic.
everything from the passion, I always say, put the passion on the plate, shut the gate. You know what I mean? There's
I
something
love
that
that.
we've always done. Yeah, and bring people along for the journey. Bring people along to celebrate with you, whether it be our managers in house
Yeah,
or even in the domestic market here, my colleagues that work with me. Yeah.
fantastic, Sam, that's great. So moving on from that, I mean, what's the best advice you ever received and who gave it to you?
Yeah, so the best advice I ever received was from my mum, and she said, "Sam, try again, and you will get there at the end. Be resilient. Nothing's easy, and just put your mind to it, work hard, and you'll achieve." Right. So, and that was a lot younger than when I was 30, but something I always
Yeah, good advice.
remember.
Sounds like my mum. She would always say to us, "There's no such word as can't, it was killed by won't." And that was like we were never as kids able to say, "Oh, I
Fran, I
can't do
lost you
that."
there.
Did you? Sorry. Said,
I'm
oh, yeah,
losing
hang
you.
on. That's okay. We'll be back. We'll
You
be
got
back.
your back.
Am I
Got your
back?
back.
Yeah, perfect. I was just saying, my mum always used to say something very similar. It was, "There's no such word as can't, it was killed by won't." So
Yes,
we were never allowed to say we can't do something. It was, "Well, go and find out, go and work out how you can." And
that's
I
it.
think, yep,
I agree.
sound advice, sound advice.
I agree.
So, Sam, we've covered the deep stuff, and thank you so much for sharing. And I know our listeners are going to find some incredible wisdom
Yeah,
in
no
there,
problems at all, Fran.
really.
That's
But we
fantastic.
haven't finished yet. So
Yeah.
before we go, I've got a few questions, and I really want you to just think about the first thing that comes to mind. And I know you've had these questions already, so you had a little bit of time to think about it. But what was the worst business or life advice you ever got?
Well, probably the worst from a business perspective is I did see this in the questions, but what's the worst life experience that I've always looking in hindsight, looking back is just work hard all the time, right? It comes back to that balance, in life. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to work all this time to get this respect and elevate through your
Yeah,
career. Yes, hard work is important, but I believe a great deal of networking, helps the way you go, and just live the mantra. Do what you say you're going to do. You don't have to always be the best at everything,
yeah,
right? But just work hard, do what you're going to do, and be respectful for people, and things will come.
yeah,
So it's not always about being so determined and working 90 hours in the kitchen or trying to outdo each other, right? You know
yeah,
what I mean? So I guess there was a real kind of pressure when you were a young apprentice that you had to do all these hours,
yeah,
you had to prove yourself, and you had to do all these tasks that weren't exciting to move up the ranks.
yeah,
No, that's not
yeah.
true.
No,
You do what you do best, and if And if you've got your weaknesses, you ask and you communicate so you can work more on those weaknesses and turn them into strengths.
I
Whereas the
agree. I
past,
agree.
when we were younger, we were too scared to say anything to some
Yeah.
of the chefs at the
Yeah.
time because that's
Yeah.
the way it was in those days, you know?
Exactly.
But
And
that was,
working.
I don't believe the way that you were treated in, and that wasn't in all the kitchens I worked in, mind you. I had some really good leaders in some, but some
Yeah.
of them, it was just a hard graft,
Yeah.
and that old military dictatorship way of bringing up people
Yeah.
doesn't work,
No, it
I
definitely
believe,
doesn't.
anyway.
It
And I
definitely
think
doesn't.
we moved on from that,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Well, that
definitely. And
would
I
be the
think
kind of worst, if you like,
advice. Yeah,
advice I got,
totally.
be hard on people and, militant. It doesn't work like that.
No, it
Show
doesn't. I agree with
empathy,
you.
learn, and work together to get to the end goal. Yeah,
That's it. Support.
yeah.
That's what it's all about. So if you could have lunch with any historical figure, who would it be?
Any historical figure? You know what? I've always uh loved the way that it's a good question, and I had an answer. I've just forgotten in my head here. Look, I would love to have a good pub lunch with Bob Hawke, the guy. But it's always thought he was a bit of a larrikin, a character, and who can forget in 1983 when we won the America's Cup, he goes, "Everyone have the day off, and if your boss doesn't let you, he's a bludger," or something like that. He was just a larrikin. Whether you're Liberal or Labor, doesn't matter. This
Yeah,
guy just was a typical Australian that had his heart in the right place. Was he the best Prime Minister? Probably not. Was he a larrikin? Yes, but I reckon it would be a bloody good laugh to have a lunch with him, So
I
I've
think you're
always
probably
liked
right.
that, and they've got a great brewery in Marrickville for Chinese restaurant called the Lucky Prawn. If you haven't been there, you got to get there. But yeah, Bob
Okay,
Hawke, I reckon.
brilliant. So what's a guilty pleasure you refuse to apologize for?
I don't know, eating chocolate. Yeah, I love my Kit Kats. I love my Kit Kats. I actually did some work with Nestle a few weeks last week with Nestle Golden Chestnut, and I had the head chef Elkie in my kitchen. And I said, "Where's my Kit Kats? Come on, I brought all you guys here. Where's my Kit Kats?" Such a, "I'll get some for you, chef. A big bag." Yeah.
Brilliant. And they've
My
arrived.
guilty pleasure's there. My guilty pleasure, I guess, is I love my cars. I love my toys. I've got a big V8 Commodore down there that I like to take you out and drive around, hoon around Sydney, in.
Brilliant.
I do spoil myself. I'm not going to lie at this later age, because what are you going to do? Die for the money? Get the shoes. You want the Nike Airs? Get them. Just
Yeah.
enjoy your life. Don't work hard all the time and scringe and save.
I bet your daughters love you then with that attitude.
Yeah, well, funny you say
Calm
that.
down,
There's an
let's go
iPad
shopping.
downstairs, brand new, just been delivered from Amazon for my daughter's birthday next week. So they don't miss out. Let me give it a tip. I got
Good.
4 cars in Hertz down there. They've all got their own cars and everything. So they're all getting around, and that's what parents do. You like to give a helping hand. And if you can give them
Exactly.
something that you didn't have when you were a kid, well, then you do it. That's it.
Exactly. And if you can put them in a car that keeps them safe, I agree with you
100%.
completely, completely.
100%.
So I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to this next question then. So if your 30-year-old self had a theme song, what would it be?
30 years old. No easy way out. Robert Tepper from Rocky 4.
Are you going to sing for us?
No, I'm shocker. Google it. No easy way out. Robert
I
Tepper.
will Google it. Don't worry, I
From
will.
Rocky 4. Tepper. You know what I mean? It's like that's my gym song. So
Brilliant.
it's a cracker. You know what I mean? It's just like be resilient. There's nothing's easy, but you'll get there.
Yeah.
The old Rocky songs. When he used to do the training montages.
I love
Love
Rocky.
those movies.
Absolutely. Rocky's still my, it's still my Eye of the Tiger is still my
That's a
wake up
cracker
call.
too.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah. But no easy way out. Robert Tepper. That's my hype song.
Right, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
there
get
you
that
go.
one.
Yep.
So, what's one thing you absolutely sucked at in your 30s, but you reckon you've mastered it now? And I think we may have already covered this.
But I absolutely sucked at. Oh, I guess. What do I say? You tell me. What do I say?
You were just talking about flying off the handle and being angry,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah. Like was never angry, but just being less tolerant, you know?
Yeah,
I guess something I absolutely sucked at and I got better, you know? I think I become a better chef over time, you know? That break into operational skills and then coming back into my trade has really helped me to be a better chef, you know? I'm not saying I sucked at it before, but I'm saying that, I've become better not just as a chef, as an operational mind, you know what I mean? I
yeah.
know what cost of goods are. I know how to get the best out of equipment. I know how to bring people along for the journey. I know how to coach people and leave them feel enthusiastic to do better at their job,
Yeah.
which is probably something I had less of when I was younger. So yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting, isn't it? How I read a book, gosh, and it's called Everyone Else is an Idiot or it's something like that. And it's about just how confident you are in your 30s about how you actually think you know everything. Whereas in fact, you really are just forming your ability to I don't know, I guess function in, in everyday life and things, and it makes it a really yeah, it was a really interesting book because it was sort of it was just talking about that, really
yeah,
just being tolerant that everybody is different. So that's
agree.
a yeah. Wow. Sam, thank you so much. That was incredible. I know so many listeners are going to resonate with your story and with the challenges that you've been through, the way that your career has taken you from the kitchen out into corporate life and operations and
Thank you,
back
friend.
into the kitchen. And I love that, that now you feel that you're a much better chef. And why wouldn't you be when you've traveled the world, seeing the top restaurants, meeting with the top chefs, with suppliers, with customers, and having that totally that huge vision of what the world food stage is, because we're so lucky to be involved in it and get to travel and eat. Wow. Before we wrap up,
Yes.
I would love to just do a quick recap and just ask you, what do you think is the biggest single takeaway that you would like someone to remember from our conversation?
The biggest single takeaway I want people to remember is that life isn't easy. Be persistent, never stop learning, be passionate about what you're doing, network, and be respectful.
I love that. So that's a lot more than just one takeaway, but I think that is
Yeah.
just about wraps up how how you can be successful in life. And I absolutely love that, Sam. Thank you so much for joining me today. And for everyone listening, here's my challenge to you. Take one thing from today's episode and apply it to your life this week. And there's a lot more than just one thing that has come from the wisdoms of Sam Burke today. So maybe it's reaching out to someone who can mentor you. Maybe it's finally taking that leap that you've been scared of. But whatever it is, take action. If this episode inspired you, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a question or a topic you want me to cover in a future episode, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to What I Wish I Knew at 30. And remember, your best chapters are still ahead. So, from myself and from Sam, it's goodbye. And we look forward to seeing you again on What I Wish I Knew at 30.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you so much, Sam.
No, good. Sorry I started there for a bit. You might be